We have breaking news from Peoria, Illinois, where a verdict has been reached in the trial of a former Illinois sheriff deputy charged with first-degree murder of 36-year-old Sonya Massey. Sean Grayson was convicted of second-degree murder in connection with the July 2024 incident. Sentencing will be January 29th. Now, Grayson testified in his own defense, which can be rare in a murder case. He said he feared for his life and shot Massey in self-defense. This is a live look right now outside the courthouse. I want to show you body camera video that was very essential to this case. Prosecutors saying, no, Grayson fired prematurely and that Massey did not pose an immediate threat. This is that video we're talking about. Massey, a 36-year-old mother, had called 911 to report a suspected prowler outside her home. Deputies showed up. This incident escalates, involving a pot of boiling water on her stove. Grayson had asked her to move it. She had said, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. And there were expletives flying, and he had basically said, I'm going to shoot you. She had cowered and said sorry. And again, this was crucial to the case here. I want to go ahead and bring in Anna Schecter. She is the senior coordinating producer for our Crime and Public Safety Unit. So Anna, I've sort of laid out this. You and your unit also have taken a deep dive into the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office. But go ahead and just tell us what you're learning here about this case and this verdict.
Well, we were looking at 3 counts of first-degree murder, and it was only a day ago that we learned that actually 2 days ago, right before jury deliberation began, that the jury could actually consider second-degree murder if mitigating factors led them to believe, yes, he did murder her, but he had a reasonable defense in that he feared for his life. So that was actually new and came late in the game. We learned right before jury deliberation that that was possible. And we that is in fact what the jury came down with, second-degree murder charges. Why is that important? Sentencing guidelines are completely different. He could face up to 20 years in prison instead of up to life in prison, 45 to life.
And so the other deputy who was on scene with him that day also testified and had actually said he didn't feel threatened. He only drew his weapon when Grayson did, although initially I believe he did tell investigators he felt threatened because he was afraid he would also be criminally charged in this. But again, going back to those mitigating circumstances, is that what the jury could have foreseen in terms of Grayson's testimony, saying she appeared under the influence of something, she appeared scatterbrained, he feared for his life, he feared that she would somehow throw the scalding water on him. And so is that a possible mitigating factor that jurors were allowed to consider?
For sure, that is the mitigating factor that is central to this. And in fact, the defense played that body cam, which a lot of our viewers and legal experts thought was really in favor of the prosecution. But the defense used it to lean into their argument that he felt that there was an imminent threat. And we also went into this question during his time on the stand of he didn't use a taser because he was worried that it wouldn't get through her clothing, because that's kind of how it works. A taser dart actually attaches to the skin. So that was part of his defense. And that's why he used the gun. I was unsure if that was going to work on the jury. Like, really, you had that time? But clearly that pot of boiling water, and what his defense said is that she raised the pot of boiling water. Now, that is a question. Prosecutors said, no, she was literally crouching down and saying sorry. So all of this same material was used by both sides. And this is really a win for Team Grayson because first-degree murder, he had a big hurdle to overcome with that very damning body cam footage where everyone saw him pull the trigger. You raised the issue of his partner who was there. I mean, that was a star witness for the prosecution, that when he said on the stand that Massey did nothing and said nothing that made this partner perceive her as a threat, I mean, that put all the onus on Grayson. So they really had a major hurdle to overcome. And so, convincing the jury that it was second-degree murder did that.
And prosecutors were trying for first-degree murder. They pointed out that Grayson threatened to shoot Massey in the face right before he actually did. But jurors did ask Tuesday after closing arguments to rewatch the body camera footage. They also asked today to see Grayson's previous employment and training history. What does that tell you?
Well, that is a really interesting point. In fact, CBS News, our team FOIA'd immediately. As soon as this became public, we knew that he had cycled through 6 different law enforcement agencies in 4 years, that there had been accusations in his file of bullying, abusive behavior, kind of intimidating behavior in one case, and then also misusing his position in another case to intimidate someone related to his family who had children, just inappropriate behavior. And then a third thing, which was the most damning, which we have the dash cam video of him driving over 100 miles an hour in a car chase, and he actually hit a deer and was uninjured, but this kind of reckless behavior. We also learned he made mistakes on his police reports, and there was a question that we never really got answered. Was he lying intentionally on those police reports? So a checkered history. Now, of course, anyone in law enforcement, people do make accusations, but in such a short time, 4 years, doing this job, cycling through 6 departments, and having that list of things, of accusations against you, that leaned in favor of the prosecution, but clearly it wasn't enough for the jury to find that he was a bad actor in this case.
CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson joins us now. Jessica, you can pick up where Anna left off. What are your thoughts on this verdict?
So my thoughts are that there was a lot going for the prosecution in this case, and that's why I think we do see that conviction. But there was a defense here that Grayson, at least himself, believed that he was acting in self-defense. When it comes to second-degree murder in Illinois, my understanding is that that's the mitigating factor we're looking at to bring us down from first-degree murder to second-degree murder. That what we're looking at is one of 2 mitigating factors that essentially would undercut the idea of premeditation that we talk about for first-degree murder. So when it comes to second-degree, what can bring you down? One is one is acting in a intense passion as a result of actions by the victim. Another is acting in self-defense where it's not reasonable, but you subjectively believed that you were acting in self-defense. And given what we've heard over the trial, I think that's where we see the jury ultimately land here, is that they do think that there should be punishment. They do think that it is murder, but that they did feel that there was that mitigating circumstance, again, based on the other evidence that the defense presented.
Jessica and Anna, stand by if you can. I do want to go to CBS News correspondent and Weekend Evening News anchor Jericka Duncan. Jericka, you're outside the courthouse in Peoria. You were inside. Tell us what you know.
Yeah, just about 20 minutes ago, the judge gathered us all in the courtroom, and he said, we have a verdict. Then the jurors came in, and they simply said, or he read the verdict, which was guilty of second-degree murder. I immediately looked at the families of Grayson as well as Massey. Massey's family was sort of stoic. I think in speaking to some of them beforehand, they were hoping for the most serious charge in terms of the conviction, which is that first-degree murder. And I also noticed Grayson's family, I'm not sure if it was his mother, but someone of about 5 or 6 people that had been here pretty regularly, bracing themselves, breathing very hard before they came in and holding the hands. And once that verdict was read, tears began to fall down their eyes. So you have both families obviously showing emotion in court. As for Grayson, he just kept his eyes on the judge. I saw him whisper over to his attorney before they put him back in handcuffs. He looked as though he was looking for his family. His family had already left the courtroom, but that's sort of what happened inside the courtroom. It was very quick. We were there for all of 5 minutes. And the judge thanked the jurors for their service. This was a jury of 8 women, 4 men, 1 black person on this jury. So, you know, we always want to hear from them after deliberation room, but we know that they must have had a lot of questions. I mean, they were deliberating for about 13 hours starting yesterday. They were asking questions about the last two parts of that second-degree murder versus the first-degree murder charge. And I think there was a little bit of confusion at one point. The prosecutor said, well, let's just get rid of that instruction. And the defense said, well, no, we agreed to these instructions, so we should keep it on and tell them that these two things are separate and they need to go back and deliberate. Then there was a question about an exhibit. There was video that they wanted to see, but also wanted the lights dimmed, from what I understand, so they could clearly see some of that video that was shown in court, I guess, to discern the actions of Sonya Massey. As you all know by now, that is at the heart of this case, that video, but also what Sean Grayson said he thought was a threat, which is that water, and what the prosecutor said, which is essentially that Grayson did not only follow policy, but they believe that this was a first-degree murder case. So it will be interesting to hear from the family of Sonya Massey, who we hope to speak to relatively soon. We haven't seen them come out just yet. There are some people that were protesting on the corner here of the courthouse. As soon as I came out of the courthouse, there were people frustrated and upset and saying this is not what justice looks like. And then maybe within 5 minutes, I heard people saying justice did happen today for Sonya Massey. So you have people that are a little split, people in that crowd that were in tears, but obviously in some ways, depending on who you talk to, this is justice for Sonya Massey, because a former deputy, was charged with second-degree murder, which is very rare when you look at the history of these police-involved shootings. Lindsay?
And Jericka, Anna Schecter had told us that it was kind of a surprise late in the game that jurors could consider second-degree murder as well. Were you in the court when that was happening earlier in the week?
No, we arrived here yesterday knowing that closing arguments were taking place. And that instruction, I believe, was given before that was an option. Yes, I know. In fact, that was because when I was in New York, that was something that we discussed in terms of trying to get here early before those closing arguments, making sure we were in the courtroom to sort of hear those last arguments from both the prosecution and the defense side.
And Jericka, stand by if you can, and if you do flag anyone down, be sure to let us know. Jessica, I just want to go back to you, and I had discussed this with Anna, but can you talk to us about the sentencing guidelines and how they differ between first degree, which is not what Grayson was convicted on, and second degree, which is what he was?
So my understanding under Illinois law, of course, we're talking about state law, is that there is actually the possibility, although I think it's remote, of no jail time, that there's no mandatory minimum in this case. When it came to first degree murder, you're looking at a potential life sentence. I think when it comes to second degree murder, what we're going to see is, I'm guessing and speculating, that a judge will look and say that there is certainly prison time that is appropriate in this case, but it may not be life in prison. I don't think that's envisioned by the state statute here, which is to say that the difference of going from first degree murder, which was charged, to this lesser included offense of second degree murder. I know you talked about the, surprise by some that you were able to find guilt on a lesser included charge, that this is a difference when it comes to sentencing. I mean, again, we're talking about, I understand the possibility of no jail time. I do not think that is a probability at all.
Back to Anna Schecter here with me in studio. As I mentioned, you and your unit have done a deep dive into the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office. Have there been any changes made since this shooting?
Well, there have. They implemented a series of trainings, retraining officers on use of force, on de-escalation, which is at the core of this case as well, methods to de-escalate. And there was a real reckoning in this community because this video sent shockwaves around the country, of course, but it really ripped open wounds in this community. And people who had loved ones who died in custody, or who also felt they experienced excessive use of force, they came together and sat down with Jericka Duncan. But also, really quickly, state law a Sonya Massey bill was passed just in the last couple of months that requires rigorous, thorough review of previous employment records before anyone can become a police officer. And that is, Illinois essentially has I would say, the highest bar at this point in time.
And Jericka, back to you. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of discussion regarding the amount of time, and I just want to also note, while we focus on second-degree murder, the jury also found that he personally discharged a firearm and killed Massey, so I believe that will be taken into consideration as well. With that sentencing, we were told 4 to 20 years on the second-degree murder charge in the state of Illinois, but that will be determined at sentencing, which right now is scheduled for January 29th of next year in Sangamon County, not here at the Peoria County Courthouse, but it will actually be where that crime was committed.
My thanks to Jericka Duncan, Jessica Levinson, and Anna Schecter for help with this coverage on breaking news. And more to come in the next hour of CBS News 24/7. Much more on the verdict in this trial. The former sheriff deputy charged with first-degree murder, convicted of second-degree murder here, acquitted on first-degree. Much more to come. Stay with us.